Okay, this video we are going to continue on from what we were doing in the last video. We just finished making a player sprite that we could move around. In this video we are going to add some sound effects to the game. I was going to start with music first, but the sound effects will be, the music is kind of a bit loud, so I think we'll start with the sound effects first. So if you haven't been following along from the other videos, you'll need to clone the repository here, this SDL2 examples, and even though there's multiple ones here, we're going to be working inside C SDL2, and we've just finished with lesson 7, the player sprite one. So we're going to take that code and we're going to move on this lesson from that code. So you'll need to get the repository, get the 07 player sprite, and then we are going to move on from there. We'll do that here. We'll just take this 7 over here, and I'll just paste it and call it 8 sound effects. And we'll close this one. Change the name real quick. This is 8 sound effects. So this video, we're going to introduce a new library. This is going to be the last one that we are adding now. It's going to be the SDL mixer. So just like in the previous one, you're going to need to install the library and the header file, and we are going to include it right here. For me, again, it's SDL2. Mixer.h, and let's just compile that real quick just to make sure it's all working correctly. Oh, let me close that sidebar. Okay, so we're going to need to add the linking of this new library. And again, make sure that all of these libraries here, the SDL2, SDL2 image, SDL2 TTF, and the SDL2 mixer, make sure they're all SDL2 versions. If you forget and drop the 2 and you actually have the library for SDL1 on your system, it'll attempt to link to that, the 1 version, and it will not work. Sound effects, and our output file will be the same. Okay. And that looks good. We didn't get any errors. Let's run it real quick. Okay, perfect, perfect. Okay, so we are going to initialize the mix. I know not all the tutorials out there show you initializing it, but we're going to go through the steps and we're going to initialize it. And we're going to do it in the same way that we initialized the image one, where we had flags. So let's look at that real quick. So we're going to be using this SDL2 mixer, and we're going to use mix init. And we have the same idea here where we're passing in flags and we're returning what flags. So we are going to be using OGG files. That's the only type of audio that I'm using in this project right here. So we're just going to use this one. So we'll do the same thing with what we did with the image one. We're just going to make a defined, we're going to define a constant that's going to hold this, and then we're going to send this into the mix init, and then we're going to check that on what actually returned from mix init, because mix init is going to return what flags were actually initialized. And we're going to do the same operation that we did before, the way that we checked it using the binary OR. So let's take this, since we're using OGG files. Go here and we'll just call them like mix flags, or I'll call them mixer flags, so it doesn't so I'm not I'm not sure if there's anything called mix flags in the SDL mixer package, so I'm just going to call it mixer flags. Oops, I keep doing that. And you can actually add multiple flags here by using the binary or. Since this is again kind of just an int that's representing the binary of what flags are turned on, you can actually or this. So if you had something like when I explained it before, if you had say a 4-bit again, and we had this kind of setup where that one was OGG, and then we were saying, well, we also want MP3s turned on or something like that, and MP3 happens to be here. If we OR this, it's going to be 0 or 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, 1 or 0 is 1, and 0 or 1 is 1. And so both of these will be turned on. So if we were to use a binary OR, like a pipe, that would be able to let us add more functionality, and we have this in this this constant, so it'll just be in our code where it needs to be. But I'm just using the one right now, so I'm not going to worry about that. It allows later on in the code. What did I do here? Not sure why these are two different colors. Okay, so let's look at that function again real quick. This is just mix init. We're going to do the exact same thing we did with the audio, so I'm just going to kind of copy what I did with the audio. Or not the audio, the image. So we're going to go down to the initialize function. And right here, the way that we did the image, it's going to be the same idea, exact same idea. Yeah, that's the perfect spot. Okay. We'll call these mix init. I think it is capital M, but the rest are lowercase. Let me just check. Yeah. So the mix one is a little bit different. Everything else, SDL uses a capital S, D, and L, but the mix module uses a capital M and then a small I and small x. So you have to remember for the mix one, that's how it works. So we got the mix init, mixer flags, where we're capturing what returned out of there. Now we're going to do the same operation where we use a binary AND to filter out just the one that we're looking for and then check it to see if that was actually what happened. And this again was explained in the prior video with the audio initialization, so I'm not going to go through exactly how this works again. And again, we can do the mix get error. Okay, so that should be initializing our mixer with the flag that we specified above. It is taking the output flags, filtering what we were looking for, and then seeing if that actually was what we got. This is our error, and that's our bailout. So now that we're initializing the mixer, we should close it down as well. So right up here in our game cleanup, I'm going to do the reverse, which the function is just a very simple one over here, mix quit. It's a void function. It's not taking any parameters. Okay, And do you see how I'm dealing with resources, but then I'm shutting the systems down? You know, I basically have two separate things happening here. These are, I'm destroying resources in the reverse order that I'm creating them, but I'm actually shutting systems down after the resources have been destroyed. I have these kind of there in their own group, and I'm again reversing them. I'm removing them in the order that I last put them in. So let's run that real quick and make sure we don't have any errors. Okay, no errors so far. So we need to open an audio. So we're going to use this mix open audio. Now I had a tough time with this one because I wanted to show the defaults that can be placed in these different the parameters or arguments for this function. And everybody uses a couple of the defaults, but I actually couldn't find them documented anywhere except for inside the actual header file. So that's what we're going to look at. I couldn't find it on the Winky lib SDL.org. I couldn't find any mention of the mixed default, say, frequency or the mixed default format, but it is used, so people use it. So it's actually specified in the header file. So we have access to it. It just doesn't have a documentation page. So we'll look down here. Where is it? So we can just use these. I'm going to just use these defaults. I could put in these magic numbers here, but I'm going to just put in the defaults. You can change them to be other things, but I was really looking for a page that was documenting this mixed default frequency, mixed default format. Unfortunately, it's only really in this header file here. So I'm going to use these defaults right here. I'm just going to literally use the default names. But you can change these. So 44,100 hertz is the upper range of our hearing times 2, basically. But sometimes you'll see it as like 48,000 instead of 44,1. If your hardware supports that, which it probably does, you should have no problem using that. And this, again, this is a 16-bit. This is a bit of a beyond the scope of this, but let's go back here. So we have our frequency, should be down here. Audio device frequency is specified in hertz. Modern times 48,000 is often a reasonable default. I'm just going to use the system one. You can change it to whatever you want. The device format, again, I know it says it might be, you can use the 32-bit one. I'm just going to use the recommended default. And the channels, that's going to be mono or stereo. I'm using the default again, which is going to be stereo. And there isn't a default for the chunk size right here. Oh, sorry. So we have frequency, we have format, we have channels, and then we have chunk size. And chunk size is kind of how, let me see if it's explained a little better here. Chunk size is the number of samples, samples per frame. So what's going to happen here is if we have too little samples per frame, we'll actually get dropouts and you get a crackling sound. If you've ever kind of worked with different kind of maybe DAWs, digital audio workstations, or audio games set Rocksmith, things like that, where you can actually set this. If you put it too low, you'll get crackling because it's actually dropping information out and you'll get this crackling sound. If you put it too high, you're going to have a delay. You're going to have a latency problem. So the default, what it recommends is 2,048 samples. I'm going to use the 1,024. But again, if you're getting crackling, you can set it higher. If you're not, you can set it lower. It's going to be a latency thing, but 1,000 is for simple games that we're doing. This is going to be no issue at all. 1,000 is should be just fine. So that's what I'm going to use. I'm going to use all the defaults. There isn't a default one for here. It's just recommended, and I'm going to use the 1,000. Hopefully that was a good explanation of all that. So yeah, I'm going to replace all these with the defaults that are in the header file. And this is returning a 0 for success as well, and we are going to capture this one. So let's grab this guy. We are in initialization. Okay. I'm putting this in an if statement because it's returning directly whether it's 0 or not. Okay, and I'm going to use those, like I said, the, what was it, mixed default frequency. It is right here. I'm gonna just use these. It says they're safe default, so that's what I'm gonna choose. But you can modify them later on if you feel like you want to try different ones out. This one's format. And is this one called channels? It is called channels, okay. What did I just do here? Okay, there we go. And again, for this chunk size, there isn't a mixed default chunk size. It does recommend 2048. I'm going to use 1024. If you're getting crackling, give it a little, double the number. If you want to try a smaller number, go ahead. And we'll just give us an error message. How about error opening audio? That seems pretty good. And that will be the mix. Now we're opening the audio, so let's close the audio. And that should be right here. And this one, nothing amazing's happening here. We want to run this after we've shut all of our sounds off and freed up the sounds. Then we're going to shut this off. This is going to happen before we're quitting the before mix quit gets called. So we are initializing, we're opening audio. So on our shutdown, we're going to do it the other way around. We're going to throw it here on the top of the stack. There we go. So mix, close audio, yes. We don't need to put anything in there. I don't believe, no. It's a void, right? Yeah. And it does say about any halted channels and so far. We're gonna do all that first, and then mix. This is called before mix quit. Any freeing of chunks, freeing of music is going to happen before this function gets called. Then this function's called. Then mix quit gets called. So it's all happening in an orderly fashion. So let's try compiling again. We're not going to have any sounds happen, but just make sure it all works. Okay, so let's load a sound. Since we're going to be loading 2 sound effects, so I'm just going to run them one after the other because they're going to be the exact same. And the function to load a sound is, it's actually mix load wave. Even though we're not actually loading a wave file, this is what this function is called. We're actually going to be loading an OGG file, but it's called mix load wave, and it's returning this is just like the textures and the other things. This is on the heap. This is a mixed chunk object on the heap that we're going to need to deal with the resources. And so we're going to be checking it the same way if it's null. So this is, we're going to create a, on the in the game struct, we're going to create 2 different variable names for our two different sound effects, and they're going to be of type mixed chunk, and then we're going to load them with this function here. So in our game struct up here, and these are managed objects again, so we need to destroy these. It's not actually called destroy, it's called free on this one, but we're gonna do that, and we're gonna initialize them to null. So this is mix, and these are chunks. So when you're using sound effects, they're called chunks. We'll call it C sound. I'm just going to put them both in here. This will be SDL sound. I'll just show you real quick where this is coming from. So up here in our sounds, we have a C og and an SDL og. Okay. So now that we have added them, let's make sure that they're initialized to null. C sound. All right. Okay, so those are there. We haven't actually loaded them yet. We're going to free them out of here when we load them. So it's going to be in the load media section, because this is where we're loading resources. And right here under this one, let's add. So this one's going to be game, and let's do the C one first. C sound. What was the name of that again? Yeah, mix. No, sorry. It's load wave. I think it's load wave. Yeah, load wave. Okay. Don't know why my LSP didn't figure that out. Okay, so for load wave, we just need the file name. And that is over, oops. That is over here. I'll show you real quick. That is the C og. And it's in sounds folder. So we're going to go sounds, C, and we will do the same thing about checking whether it failed or not. C sound error. Let's call it loading sound. Sound chunk. Error loading chunk. How about that? And this will be mix error. That's a return. I'm just going to copy this whole thing and do it again for the SDL since we're already here. So this one's SDL. SDL. Checking SDL here. Okay, we're loading both of these. Before we test it out, let's make sure we free them. So the function to free them is here, mix free chunk, and it's returning void, and we're just passing in the chunk. And again, this is okay if it's already null. So if it hasn't been created yet, we can still run this as long as the pointer was null. If it's null, it's going to return immediately out of this. So let me go back to that again. Mix free chunk. Okay. Mix free chunk, and it's called game. Sound. Okay. So we're not playing it yet. It's going to be the next step, but I just want to check it one more time just to make sure no mistakes. I like to check often just so I don't end up writing code for 5 or 10 minutes and then suddenly I'm not sure where the error occurred from, so if I do it in steps, one step, 2 steps, and then keep checking in between. Whenever I get an error, I know it happened in between those 2 times. Okay, so we are loading, and when we close this, we should be freeing. And we can check real quick by maybe messing up the name of one of these. Right here, see if this is, in fact, loading and freeing it correctly. And there we go. So that's our message, and then this is the actual message that comes out of mix get error. So we'll close that side, fix this, and now let's actually make this sound happen. So to play a sound, we are going to use mix play channel, and we can specify the channel, and this return is actually returning what channel it went on, but I don't really care what channel it's on. We're going to have basically a default of 8 possible sound effects that we can play at one time. So when I'm talking about channels here, I'm not talking about left and right as in stereo channel. I'm talking about how many actual effects I can play at one time. So I can play 8 effects at one time, and so they're going to be 8 different channels. And I don't want to worry about what channel it's in right now. So I can specify -1, and it'll basically allow this sound to play on the first available channel that's not being used right now. So that's what we're going to do, -1. We're going to pass in the chunk, and this is if we wanted a sound effect to loop or not. We don't want it to loop, so I'm going to, if we just want it to loop indefinitely, it would be -1, but I'm actually going to just not have it loop at all. So I believe it's 0, but I'm just double checking. Yeah, it's going to be 0. So a 0 means it's going to play just the one time, but then it's not going to loop after that at all. So we are going to use this. And the first place I would like to play this sound, how about we have since we have a C sprite and we have an SDL text bouncing around the screen, I'm going to, every time I press the space bar and it changes the background color, I'm going to have it say C. And every time SDL bounces off the edges of the screen, I'm going to have it say SDL because it says SDL there. So for the first one, let's just go up real quick to where this is happening. And I know I'm putting this code directly in here. I could put this into its own function, but I really only have 2 commands going on in here, so I'm not that worried about it right here just for this demo project. And this function can fail too, especially if, say, I've already hit the spacebar 8 times, and before the first sound that started playing was able to finish, I hit it again. There won't be a channel for it to play on, so it will fail. So I'm not checking if it fails. I don't care if it fails. I'm just going to let it fail. And it's a dot again because we are not, we are using the game object directly here. We'll go with the C sound. We need the -1, sorry. -1 for it to use first available channel, and 0 for how many times we're looping. And let's try it. And this time we should hear it say something. So whenever I press the space bar, we should hear it say C.
C, C, C.
Okay. So let's add the other sound effect. With just the exact same thing right here. But we need it to happen every time we bounce off a wall. So we're going to put it in the update for for the sprite update. And specifically when one of these becomes true, we'll put it in here. And we're going to have to actually put it in all of them. But we could use different methods. But again, this is very simple. This isn't meant to be a game. This is a demo project. So I'm just going to actually put it in the 4 different places. I'm not going to try to make it fancy. And because we are using game as a pointer here, we need to dereference this. And this needs to be SDL. Now I'm just going to do the simple dumb way of putting it into each of them. And I just remembered one thing. I would actually like, before I start cleaning up the resources on these sounds, I would actually like to make sure that no sound effects is playing. So let's go talk about that real quick before we play this one. So we're playing a channel, but just to make sure, that we're just really being careful about every step here. We can actually tell all the channels, all sound effects to halt when we're shutting down the program. So if any sound was happening, we can halt that sound before we start freeing up the memory for it. So, and the way we can do all channels is by using -1. So if we call this with a -1, we're going to tell all channels to halt. And let's just use this function before we start freeing those chunk resources to make sure if any sound, this is not really a huge deal, but just using the best coding practices here. I did forget to do that, actually. No. It's in the right here. So before I start freeing up these chunks, I would just actually like to make sure that they're not playing. And it's not, again, it's not catastrophic. Nothing's going to happen if we didn't do it. But I'm just trying to do the best job here. Okay, so now we've added we should get SDL being set every time we bounce off the walls. I'm just going to let it bounce around. Okay, I'm not hearing.
C, C, C.
Okay, so let's see what we possibly have done wrong here. Okay, so in our... Oh, sorry. Yeah, I put these in the sprite update, and they need to be actually in the text update. So I was totally not paying attention here. So actually, we will get the sound effect if we just play it again real quick. Every time I press an arrow, and it's gonna overload the thing. It's gonna play the sound really fast. Let's just show what I mean here.
SDL, SDL, SDL.
Yeah.
SDL.
Yeah. We'll fix that. So it's a bit silly. Okay, I'm just gonna copy this one last time and undo. Whoops, I don't want to undo that. Okay, I'll just do that then. Yeah. I want to recover that. That was the... Okay. That was silly. Okay, let's get back down there. And so it was supposed to be in these checks here, and I put them down here, which they don't need to be there. Okay, and they can be over here. trying to rush to finish up the stream, and I'm making mistakes. Okay, so I've made some mistake somewhere. Where have I done it? Oh, okay, yes. This should be -1. Just checking this out.
SDL. C. SDL. C. SDL. C.
Okay, so let's just walk through it again real quick. So every time SDL is bouncing off the walls here, we having it say SDL, and every time we press spacebar, it changes the color. Says C as well. So let's just go back through everything that we've done really quick. So we're doing the same method with the flags when we initialize the mixer. We're using the same flag technique down here in initialize. So we're doing that, and we're using the same technique to check whether the flag that we wanted turned on is turned on. And then we're opening the audio, and we're using all the defaults that are in the, if you go to the actual, where is it? The page for, this is the actual GitHub development page for SDL. But actually, if you have the header file installed on your system, it'll be there as well. But you can have a read through, and this tells how many the mixed channels. We have 8 channels. This channel is for stereo. That's a different thing. Yeah, so I just use the defaults from there, but you can read this page, and you can change it to other things. So we are initializing that, and then we're closing it. So that we've created it, we've closed it. So we've quit the mix. This is happening in order like this. So this is happening last. We're closing the mix. We have these 2 new chunks here that we've created. These are sound effects. We've initialized them. And then we have loaded in the sound effects with mix load wave. Using the files, we're checking to see if we got null returned, and then we can actually, and we're freeing them, of course, as well. We're making sure all the channels are turned off first, and then we're freeing them, closing the audio, everything's going backwards, and we're playing them with mix play, and we're using -1 means first available channel. This is the sound effect we want to play, and this is how many times we want it to repeat. And that is about it. I hope you had a good time, and that's going to be it for today.